Hey guys, I want to talk to you about the subject of iPsychopaths. So in other words, internet psychopaths. The reality is, or it's pretty well accepted now, that between 1 and 2% of people are psychopathic. And it doesn't mean that, of course, it doesn't mean that 1 to 2% of the population are Charles Manson running around killing people. It just means that 1 to 2% of the population have the psychopathic behaviours and or personality types. So obviously they're not all acting out crimes, they're not all criminals, and they're not all killing people or anything like that. The majority of them obviously aren't killing people. Some of them are, of course. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. So the ones that we encounter in our lives usually are not the ones that are killing people, of course. But it means that 1 to 2%, between 1 and 2% of the people that we encounter are psychopathic. So it means that on a place like YouTube, where we're exposed to millions of people, it means that there is a lot of psychopaths here. So that explains why. I mean, the reason I'm actually making this video is I was amazed on the videos I made on my other channel about the typhoon and tsunami in Japan. I was amazed because I'm always, I always see the iPsychopath comments on YouTube, and I usually ignore them, but it was particularly disgusting to see them on the tsunami and earthquake videos, because thousands of people died and it was a terrible humanitarian tragedy, and we've got the iPsychopaths on there making their comments about they're being punished, kids, women and kids and old people are dying and killed, and we got people on there making comments about they're being punished for eating whale, and comments from people saying about something like Hiroshima, or just like iPsycho comments, so it sort of triggered me to make this, because I've always been aware of this. I did a study a number of years ago. I studied some criminology, and part of that was looking at psychopathy, and at that time I learnt this about the 1 to 2% of people are psychopathic. So since then I've kept that in mind when I come across a psychopath, because they're easy to spot. I'll explain why in a minute, but when I come across a psychopath now, I just ignore them, So usually I just ignore them and don't worry about it. As soon as I recognise someone's psychopathic, I ignore them, because there's no point in pursuing it any further, no point in any further discussion with them. It's a waste of time. In relation to that tsunami and earthquake was fairly disgusting. But anyway, so let's get down to it. The symptoms of a psychopath. One of the first one is there's a whole heap of them. I'll just touch on the ones that are relevant to us, or that we see are most easy to spot. One of them is superficial charm. So it means that they can come across as being really nice people. So they often use that. It's quite common. That's why it's quite common for people to say, there'll be someone that just comes across as I thought he was a lovely guy, but it turns out he's a real asshole. Or, the neighbour that was a really nice guy but ended up, killing people and that sort of stuff. Usually, often, they have superficial charm. So often, they appear to be extremely lovely people on the outside, and they use that to manipulate people. So they give this image of being really nice people, and lots of people say, he's a really great guy, he's a really great guy. But in actual fact, no, he's not. He's actually a psychopath. But he has the ability to come across as a really nice person. One of the other characteristics is that they're often at least average intelligence, if not above average intelligence, is another part of it too. So that's why, if you look at the criminal psychopaths like Charles Manson and people like that, they were really popular. He had all these people that followed him and thought he was great, and that's quite common with psychopaths. And the non-criminal psychopaths in our lives, at work, quite common at work, and quite often they're managers at work, because they're very good at manipulating people. They come across as really charming. They're at least average intelligence, often above average intelligence, which means that they can play people. And that's what they can So, okay, come across as charming, average intelligence, above average intelligence. They're usually untruthful and insincere, which means that they, as well as the charming and the above average intelligence, they are quite comfortable lying. Quite often they lie to themselves, but more often they lie to everybody else and deceive people and give across certain impressions or say certain things, but in actual fact it's not true. It's just part of their manipulation tools. Impulsive, which is why on YouTube often, you know, you get these spontaneous outbursts from people, and they're also moody or have changing moods, which means that's why on YouTube sometimes you'll come across a comment, someone makes a comment, someone responds to it, and then the first person just loses their mind and goes crazy and aggressive and attacks them, because it's that combination of impulsiveness and mood swing. So one moment they're happy and content and it's all good, and then someone just pushes a button and they go crazy and impulsive and moody and aggressive. Bomb bomb. One of the worst problems with them is they lack remorse or guilt or compassion, which means that they can do nasty things to people and not feel any bad feelings about it at all. So that's why if you work with psychopaths, or if you've got a psychopathic boss, which often happens, psychopaths are often promoted into senior positions in work environments because of the reasons I've mentioned till now. You know, they have the ability to manipulate and to come across as really good people, and so they can really put themselves into good positions. So yeah, and then do nasty things to people and not feel bad about it. So I mean, all this is why, and there's the lack of compassion. That's why a lot of these guys can leave comments. So when I make a video about people dying in earthquake and tsunami, that's why these guys can come along and go, serves them right for eating whale. For all these reasons. They don't feel, you know, that's not their problem. All those kids and old people and everybody died, and you know, all those people are devastated, but you know, it doesn't matter. So, and because of that too, because of these reasons, talking to these people is a waste of time. You know, because of these reasons, these things are deep inside their personalities, and they're not going to change. So that's why I was saying before, as soon as I recognise somebody is psychopathic, I don't bother with them anymore. I don't bother. I mean, if I have to, if I'm in an environment where I have to deal with them, I'll deal with them. But from the point that I recognise that they're psychopathic, I don't try to change anything or to do anything. I just sort of, okay, that's fine, okay. You know, and on YouTube, I just don't. If I get comments from psychopathic people, I just ignore them. If they're aggressive and rude and nasty and horrible, I delete them. But the worst thing you can do is to respond to them, because it just triggers them off. I've got to admit, occasionally I do poke one with a stick. If I get smacked in the head hard enough by one of these people, I will hit back occasionally, but it really is a waste of time. You're better off not doing it. And what happens is they have one of the other symptoms is they have huge egos where they think that they're better than everybody else. And this is a big one. I mean, it's like they get God complex, you know, like Charles Manson was an example of that, you know. A lot of them think they're Jesus, or they're Jesus that come back, or some of them aren't that crazy. Some of them just think that they're better than everybody else, you know, and that comes across too, you know, and you can see that again. You can see that in workplaces, you can see that in all different parts of our lives, these people that you meet that, you know, YouTube's classic for it. You know, people on YouTube that a few people watch their videos, so they think that they're really important and really famous, and, you know, tell people that they're famous and important and special and all that sort of stuff, and they really believe it. You know, they have a really pumped up sense of self-worth, which is also why debating with them or arguing with them is a waste of time, because they're convinced that they're more valuable than you and that they're more important than you, and their opinion's worth more than yours is, and what they think is more intelligent than you are, and basically nothing you can say is going to change that. So they're not likely to suddenly go, you know, I've thought about what you said and you're right. It's not their style. So you're really wasting your time with them, you know. So, you know, these guys that, yeah. So if they have that image, they have that image of themselves that they are the they're the, you know, king of the world, and that everybody else is is below them. So debating is a waste of time. So yeah, another one is a parasitic lifestyle, which means quite often what you find is these guys are either supported by their parents. That's a very common one on YouTube. You know, you've got the young psychopathic dude living at home with mum and dad, and they're supporting him, and he thinks he's the king, and you can see all the things I've just listed, you know, and you know, but basically mum and dad support him. He's living there at home with his mum and dad, and they buy him the computer and they give him the car and tell him he's the king, and he thinks he's the king, and he gets on YouTube and tells you that, you know, he's better than you, basically. The older ones, quite often, they're still parasitic. They'll live off their partners, you know, their girlfriends, live with their girlfriends, and the girlfriends have to pay for everything or support them, or, you know, they find other ways of, because it's all, you can see all these personality characteristics are all connected. So because they think they're more important than everybody else, they think they deserve it. And I've known people like this in real life as well, that they think because they're more important than everybody else, that they deserve to be supported by the government, or supported by their friends, or supported by their partner, or supported by their family, or whoever. They think that everybody owes them because they're so special, right? And, you know, it's the way it is. So my point of all this, guys, is, I mean, in real life too, my motivation for making this was just to sort of, because all the nice people tend to get drowned out a little bit by the psychopaths, you know, on the internet and also in real life. I mean, it's one thing I like about Japan, the psychopaths here are less visual, less obvious. In other countries I've been to, the psychopaths, you know, they're louder. Psychopaths here are quieter, you don't notice them as much. But it happens in real life, doesn't it? You know, we come across these people, and I'm sure, as I've been explaining this, I'm sure lots of people are going, oh, I know someone, you know, in our lives like that, someone at work, or someone in our family, or next to a neighbour, or and on the internet there's lots of them. So my first motivation to make this was just to say to you good people, because the good people get drowned out by these people, unfortunately. You know, you get 100 people make a nice comment on a video, and then you get the psychopath come along and, oh, Japanese people deserve it for eating whale, and, you know, we showed them in World War II, we dropped a bomb on them and all that stuff, and 100 other people all feel really bad. It's like, who's this sick fool, you know? My point is, ignore them, because responding to them is a waste of time. They won't listen to you anyway, and actually what happens is, if you respond to them, it makes it feeds that I'm important thing that I was talking about before, because you're listening to them. They're saying something and you're responding to it, which is why I try not to respond to them. Occasionally I can't help myself, you know, because, you know, occasionally one of them hits me in the head and I want to hit them back. It's sort of a natural reaction, but it's not worthwhile. The best way to deal with a psychopath is to ignore them, and recognise they're a psychopath and go, right, okay, he's an iPsycho, he's an internet psycho, or in real life he's a psychopath. No point in discussing it further. It's a waste of time. Is the best way to deal with them, because all that happens is if you engage them, it gets worse. Usually they can get really nasty, and I've experienced this at work, in work environments, in my old country, and also on the internet. You know, I've had internet stalkers on YouTube. I've had serious harassment and serious stalking because what happens is, if you offend their ego, and I've actually had a couple of them take me on, and I've hit back with comments, you know, and said stuff to them, and they get really emotional because you're not bowing down to them. You're not saying, oh, okay, you know, okay, you're right, I'm sorry, and they really arc up, and they're the ones, they're the psychopathic stalker, and go crazy. They go crazy, you know, and they're the ones, and we've all experienced them on the internet, can't leave us alone. You know, if you take them on, they'll be the one that just harasses you and harasses you and harasses you and harasses you, because they can't let it go, because basically their huge ego has been challenged by you and they can't leave you alone. So it's not worth it, guys. It just creates more problems. If they are a psychopath, you will not solve it. you will not reach any sort of satisfactory conclusion with them. The best way is just to go, yeah, okay, whatever. Don't respond at all is the best solution. And if one of them takes you on, just, yeah, okay, just ignore it. And this is the same in real life, it's the same at work. It's hard in a work environment. I have seen this before in a work environment. If you have a psychopath above you at work, it can be really horrible because because of all those things I listed, they can have the other people at work totally convinced that they're wonderful people, but make your life hell. And that's quite common in a work environment, that a boss will call someone into the office, hey John, can you come in here for a moment? And take them in and close the door and be really rude and abusive to them. And then when they open the door, they come out smiling again and being nice again, and everybody goes, but he's a lovely guy. And I'm sure you guys have experienced this before too, where you try and tell somebody, hey, he's crazy, that guy's crazy, he's not real. And they won't believe you. No, he's a lovely guy. Look at all the nice things he does to people. Look how lovely he is. He's a lovely, lovely, lovely guy, for the reasons I mentioned. Because they're manipulative and because they're smart and they can convince everybody that they're wonderful people. So the main thing is, if we recognise it, we don't have to convince anybody else. It's usually a waste of time. And we should never say to someone, you are a psychopath, because it's not the solution. For all the reasons I just mentioned, they will arc up. They will arc up. So it's best off never to say to someone, hey, you're a psychopath. I know you're a psychopath. I can see all the symptoms. Waste of time. And we shouldn't really say it to anyone else either. Hey, that guy's a psychopath. Because they usually won't believe us and they'll think that it's our problem. The most important thing is that we recognise it, because once we recognise it, once we diagnose it and recognise it, we know that any sort of conflict with that person is going to cause problems, and we're better off just leaving them go. So when you see it on YouTube, guys, just ignore it. When you get those comments from those characters that are saying terrible things, just ignore them. If they're bad enough, I delete them and block them. I try not to respond to them myself. It's best not to. It's a waste of time. So anyway, there's the iPsycho. Yee! Let's try and avoid them, shall we? Let's ignore them. It's 1 or 2% of the population. It's quite high, isn't it? So, but just keep in mind, 98% plus of the rest of the population is okay. So we'll focus on them. Ignore the psychos. Ignore the psychos. Ignore the iPsycho. More videos coming soon.